Hi, this is Mark Rosen from WCCO TV, and it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend Ron Henderson, the Fitness King, presenting Motivation, one word to help change your life.
Hi. Have you ever had the time in your life when maybe you thought about learning a new language or maybe even a new sport? Well, on today's show, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Luke Wong. He is the owner and creator of TwinCitiesChineseTutor.us. Welcome to Motivation, Luke. How are you?
Thank you very much, Ron. I'm doing great.
Great. Now, before we get into today's episode of Motivation, I gotta show off my Chinese skills just a little bit.
Sounds wonderful.
All right, if I can. Now, folks at home, I might massacre this, but I'm hoping maybe I get closer to mastering it.
Wonderful.
Okay. 欢迎欢迎，很高兴。你来节目。
哦，谢谢。我很高兴你邀请我。你的中文很好。
哪里，太奇酷了。
你学中文几年了？
差不多2年了。这是我的爱好。
非常好。Great job. Wow.
谢谢你. Thank you very much.
I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. Coming from the master, I appreciate that. Now,
you.
Folks at home, I hope I didn't massacre that too much. No. But I've been studying Chinese for a while, and I actually saw Luke on YouTube. And folks at home, I got to tell you something. I was so impressed with his ability to teach. I even had a class from Luke, a private lesson, and this guy is remarkable. He is sharp. Okay, but before we get into all your talents and accolades, where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born in Shanghai, China. I came to the United States in 2006 for college. So I went to St. Olaf College and has been sticking around teaching and helping students learn the Chinese language and culture.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. So you're born in Shanghai.
Yes.
What was childhood like for you? Because you're here in the States now, but what was childhood like for you? Then I want to talk about, too, even the education growing up. What was childhood like?
Well, in China, all students are required to study a foreign language, actually. English is a mandatory subject along with Chinese and mathematics. So for all students, if you want to go to middle school, you have to pass the English test.
Okay.
If you want to go to high school, you have to pass another English test. If you want to go to college, you're going to pass another English test. If you want to go to grad school, even if you're studying, a major of ancient Chinese, you still need to pass the English test.
And you passed all those.
So
Let's hear about that.
That's a good question. Well, the fact is that I wasn't that great of a student for English language until probably near the end of high school, where I really had a paradigm shift moment.
Explain that.
So before then, learning language, as most people had experienced, is mostly a school subject. So you do it because your parents want to do it, because the school requires it.
Yep.
And you're doing it to make sure you get option A instead of option B, and the teacher teaches that way.
Yep.
This is not very helpful for learning language, and so I literally, as a bored teenager I was, I fell asleep in my tutor session for learning English. And I was getting to the last several years of high school, and I was exploring my options of college and universities. In China, you pretty much have to pass the college entrance examination to get into any universities you want. But I really was frustrated about that experience. So I got a hold of some alumni in my high school who were studying in universities in the United States at the time. So, and then he was giving me some mentorship about the whole process, and I was really motivated to actually improve my English. And then I realized, I'm not really learning it to pass a test per se. I'm learning it so that I have a clear awareness that it's going to affect my life in the United States.
Yep.
It's a survival skill. Then I look at it completely differently, and then I start to dig into more how I can learn better for myself, and how my brain works, what's the most effective way of remembering vocabulary, building the habit of thinking in a different language, and that really later on affects my teaching a lot too.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's go back to that.
Sure.
So here you are.
Yeah.
You didn't do well in school initially.
No,
Okay.
no.
And I think I call you Tong Ming, Hen Tong Ming. That means he's very, very smart.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And here you are. You're teaching, and
Right.
you're a great. I mean, honestly, you're a great teacher.
Thank you.
All right. So. But when you look at your background, you would say
Sure.
there's no way that this guy would be actually teaching.
Right.
And you've taught politicians, you've taught a lot of people.
Right.
Dignitaries.
I've taught diplomats, U.S.
Right.
diplomats, CEOs, international lawyers, NBA players.
Yes, sir.
And also, of course, a lot of students from all ages.
Right.
But the way I look at my role when I'm helping students, well, all started from college. I was pretty much a teaching assistant at St. Olaf for the Chinese language department. And I started just building a rapport with other students because I can see how they struggle. Because I was that person
Sure.
who was struggling. And,
Right.
and I can totally relate to anyone who had difficulties learning a language. And eventually, I was able to speak English fluently, thanks to a lot of people.
Sure. And you learned most of that here, though, right?
Actually, well, not
No?
exactly. Well, I have to pass a level test called TOEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language.
Just to, okay.
So you have to reach a certain level to qualify you for applying for colleges here.
Okay, and how does the learning, as far as the education of how
Yeah.
they teach there, how does that different from here in the States?
So first of all, there is a certain level of consistency on the teaching material that Chinese schools use.
Okay.
So when you transfer to a different school, you're not starting from zero.
Okay.
You are pretty much expect to pick up where you left.
Are they loving? Because you go to college, the teachers are all loving you, right?
Well, no.
In Minnesota there, come on.
No way, no way. I was never told that I was a good student until
Oh, wow.
yeah, until I came to the United States. So it was quite of a. I fought the idea of being a teacher for a while, just
Okay.
because my experience in China. But on the other hand, I enjoy, clarify things, making things simpler to understand for
Right.
people, and also helping people to improve.
Yep.
So that's some traits that eventually lead to my career as a tutor and trainer and a teacher.
Okay, and
Yeah.
before we go to that, when
Yeah.
you were learning English,
Sure.
you had trouble with it, I think, in the
Sure,
beginning.
sure, yes.
Now, what did you pick up? And I know you use this
Right.
when you're teaching people Chinese.
Right.
What was it in there that you picked up that started making it easier
I
for
see.
you?
Yeah. So for a very long time, memorizing vocabulary,
Right.
spelling was just a big headache. I started to learn a little differently because I was actually really interested in American culture and American music.
Yep.
And as a musician, I started to listen to a lot of American songs. So just for people that, most Chinese people are very familiar with American pop cultures, a lot more than the Americans' understanding of Chinese pop cultures, right? So as a listener of those songs, I was learning and practicing singing. And during that process, I realized, start to pick up the flow of the language.
Yep.
And that's also very, very important. Whatever language you learn is to understand how they flow.
Yep.
The rhythm, the melody of a language is crucial when it comes to speaking.
Yes.
So this is something that a school doesn't really teach. Most of teachers, in China, doesn't really quite grasp that idea
Right.
themselves.
Right.
So, for example, I'll give you an example. I always say Mall of America. Everybody understand that.
Right.
Mall of America. But in China, when you're learning word by word, you will not say it as smoothly like Mall of America, because those blurring of the consonant and vowels between words is really hard to fathom. And that's something that hasn't been explained to
Right.
Chinese people. So when it comes to teaching Chinese later on, this is also something I start to address, is the rhythm and the flow. And that really can help you understand and express yourself better.
Right.
So another thing I did at the time is, because of the paradigm shift moment, I tried to immerse myself and try to push myself to think in English every moment. So all the monologues I had when I look into the mirror, when I'm working on some problem myself, I will try to force myself start to speak English.
Right.
And this is the major difference between learning a language from acquiring a language.
Right.
To acquire something, you actually really need to internalize it.
Right. Oh yeah.
And
Because I'm thinking Chinese right now while you're talking. I'm thinking
Exactly.
Yingwei.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Wait, Shema. I mean, I'm thinking
Exactly.
basically. So every time you were dealing with something, you were thinking English.
Yeah.
English. Okay.
Exactly.
So you started teaching here how many years ago? 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's about
Okay.
right.
How did you decide that, hey, I'm gonna do this paradigm shift, and now I'm taking all this, and I'm gonna start my own school.
Right.
Where did it
So,
start?
So what I offer is mostly private lessons, one-on-one tutor and mentorship. So
And how did you start it?
So the reason why I started this actually is because after college I had a degree in economics and Asian studies, and I had years of experience working with students as a teaching assistant.
Okay.
So one of the professor from my college referred a student who was struggling in a high school to me for some assistance. So I was tutoring him part-time.
Did you enjoy that?
Oh, I loved it.
Okay.
But the experience is so wonderful that both the family and I are now long-term life friends. The student now is in college and is very successful. And so at that time, turn a C student to a straight A student. That experience is just really motivating. It's really spiritually rewarding. So I was like, maybe I should just do more of that. So as I was, listing myself and picking up more students, helping more people, I realized this is really something that's, rewarding.
Yes,
And then I pretty much just turned that into a full-time gig.
Okay.
So-
because I was doing some homework on you,
Right, thank
and I
you.
noticed that you were doing some. Explain some of the stuff you did with the Timberwolves,
Oh, sure.
Minnesota Timberwolves.
So in the past 2 years, Timberwolves are making an effort to reach out to their Chinese audience and also the Chinese-speaking audience in the Twin Cities area in Minnesota. So I was helping them making some promotional videos for example, Karl Anthony Towns. He was really trying to get into the All-Star game 2 years ago and trying to market himself to the
Right.
Chinese audience to get some votes. So I helped Timberwolves media team to put up a skit to really showcase his Chinese a little bit, and also showcase the Chinese speaker, the Chinese students in the Twin City area, and they get together and the little kids from the emerging schools start to speak Chinese, and that was just a great success. And eventually
sure.
made it to the All-Star game that year. And last year, the beginning of this year was the Chinese New Year. So Timberwolves is also making an effort to reach out to the Chinese community by celebrating the Chinese New Year.
And how did they get a hold of you? I got to interrupt. How did they get a hold of you?
Very good
How did they get a
question.
hold of this young man from Shanghai? Okay,
Right,
that
right.
quit school. Didn't quit school, but you know what I'm saying. You had that experience. How did they get a hold of you?
Just turn that around.
Yes.
The media director of Timberwolves
Okay.
reached out to me. So I had been pretty much friends ever since, and we have a long-term relationship. If in the future, I'm pretty sure there's more efforts. They want to reach out to the Chinese market, and they have a minority owner of who is Chinese.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so they are actually traveling to China this coming month. So it's gonna be great. I definitely appreciate that experience.
Right. Do you mind? Would you mind sharing with me and the audience
Yeah.
maybe one or two teaching techniques that you use? Because I want to show people what separates you from other teachers.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. So first thing I like to do is always I like to use musical instruments to explain the Chinese tones. Okay. So because Chinese language is tonal, which is quite different from English, we attach a pitch or a pitch change to each word. And it's a lot easier if I can demonstrate it on the instrument. That's one thing I do. Another thing I do is I try to establish a habit to help students learn.
Yep.
So there is something I called space repetition. So I develop a tool to work with some online flashcard sets and to document your progress. Every round you study, and it shows how much you remember every time. And in the end, it shows you to remember, a set of vocabulary, 20 words, how many rounds it takes you without looking back, without staring at it for more than 5 seconds.
Okay.
Eventually, students it's very clear for them to see the progress. Another thing I love to do, especially with younger students, is total physical response. That means I'm not going to explain anything. This is what a lot of immersion schools do. I'm not going to explain anything. I'll just do it with you. And you just watch me, and you will pick up the visual cue, the body language. For example, if I say, 好,很好,
很好,
非常好,
非常好.
and you're going to do with me. And this is pretty much universal language, means good, very good,
Very good.
extremely good. And we just do it. Connect that idea, the body motion, with the sound directly instead of translating to English. And this is another thing that I want to focus on, and I always emphasize to the students who are learning Chinese.
I like this.
Yeah.
What's the youngest age that you've taught Chinese to, and what's the oldest?
Well, I had students.
You're guessing.
Yeah, I had students from 3 years old to 75 years old. So the oldest is 75 so far.
Okay. Is there a particular group that you would prefer to work with if you had a choice?
Well, that's a good question. I enjoy working with all ages. I have students who are, as young as 3, but also working with adults is also very rewarding, because this is another challenge that I always face, because I always hear people say, you can't pick up a new language
Right.
when you are older, when you are after, 20 or 30. In my experience, it's not true at all. And I definitely enjoy trying to turn that mindset around, to show students that, at any age, you can learn a new language, and it's going to be rewarding, it's going to be fun, it's going to be, door opening.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because folks at home, we had a lesson a couple days ago, and I remember saying something to you. I said, well, that's going to be hard for me to pick up. And you were like, oh, you're already, and then it's funny, because then later that day,
Yeah.
I realized something that I typically don't do.
Yeah.
I normally don't make statements like that. What I say is, I can get it.
Yeah.
And that's what I teach people with training, because the reason I'm studying all these different languages, because I feel that it's actually easy to learn any language,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
And what happens is you close that door to learning when you say, I can't, it's too hard.
Exactly.
I don't say it's too hard, I say I just got to find that door that opens up that language
Absolutely.
to me.
Absolutely.
And I know when you were talking about singing and different things, and we were talking about different tones and how to get that. That was very helpful, actually, for
Thank
me.
you. Thank
okay.
you. Yeah.
Even though, like I said, I haven't mastered it yet. See.
You're currently struggling,
Shishining. I
but
appreciate it.
you're on your way there.
Right. And then you sang too, right?
Yes.
Do you bring this into your lessons? Some of this stuff.
Of course, of course. So we'll switch around. Sometimes just listen to some Chinese music, and especially for younger students, it's really important to constantly switching gear to grasp their
Right.
attention, and to incorporate learning with music,
Yep, yep.
activities, games. They're all very important. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
So what motivates you to do what you're doing?
Well, that's a very good question. Main reason is that the instant gratification my generation love is when I see that I can make a difference every lesson on helping students improve their language skills, and seeing that the light bulbs just pop up
Right,
in their
right,
head,
right,
and that's really rewarding.
Right. Now, let me ask you a funny question.
Sure.
Folks at home, I like to have fun with my guests.
Sure.
Would you ever consider shaving your head?
Wow, that's something I've never thought about.
Now, you know why I asked you
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Because folks at home, if he shaved his head, he'd be like another fitness king, because you remind me of me. Because honestly, when I'm teaching people, when I'm training people,
Yeah.
I get so much out of it. I just love seeing people take that next step up. When
Right.
they conquer that and they see they can do it, and their
Right.
body starts to change, and you feel that way about a student.
Exactly.
They're picking up the pace. They're learning
Exactly.
quicker. They're learning quicker.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
So to answer your question, yes, I
Okay.
I will eventually. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you mind singing just a short little number? Like maybe 2 lines, because we were talking about you saying.
Oh, singing?
Yeah, I want to hear you sing. Just for the audience.
Okay. All right. I'll sing.
Sing something in Chinese a little bit, then tell
Sure.
them what you said.
Okay. 你问我爱你有 多深，我爱你有几分。我的情也真，我的爱也真，月亮代表我的心。
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that.
I know you like that
I
song.
love that song. It's one of
Yeah.
my favorite songs.
Yes. So this song is called "The Moon Represents My Heart." So it's a beautiful song. You asked me how much I love you.
Right.
你问我爱你有多深. So when you're singing, actually, it's also very helpful because we don't need to worry about the tones.
Right.
And just focus on the pronunciation.
Oh, so now when I go someplace, I can just say, I can just sing it, right?
Absolutely.
Let's start over. 欢迎欢迎很高兴.
很好，很好，非常好，非常好。
I like
Well,
that.
thank you.
Good. So do you play instruments too?
Yes. Well,
Very cool.
I was in a band, a local band. I play guitar and I
Okay.
Write songs. So that's learning instruments is actually very similar in a lot of ways with learning language because you start off. You have to practice slow to start off.
Yeah.
And then after you master the movement, the motion, get smoother, that's when you can pick up the speed. And eventually you don't even really think about it.
Yeah.
You just keep doing it and you don't really pay attention to it. And that's where we want to be. Whatever language we're learning.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you share the same understanding.
Oh, yeah.
When you're working out, you probably will get in the zone.
Oh, yeah.
You don't really worry about it. And,
Right.
and that's the beauty of it, I think. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. When
Yeah.
you're teaching, let's say you're teaching a high school student,
Sure.
but then now you have a dignitary that you're teaching. Is your teaching technique pretty much the same?
Ah, that's a very good question. I'd see about year 12 to 13 as a milestone where the students start to engage more of their logical mind. So I will start to tap into that more
Okay.
after that age group. So what I will do before that age group, mostly like what I was just
Sure.
saying, we do a lot of motion, we play games, we learn vocabulary by pointing at things. But after they turn older, then I can start to leverage their logical mind and say, okay, here, let's see, why is this? This is how Chinese think. That's why I made those videos
Right.
on YouTube, Chinese Grammar Simplified, because the way Chinese organize the sentence elements are quite different from English. At an early age, even though some of the students, even in immersion school, can pick up vocabulary really fast, can pick up the sound really
Yep.
fast, you can still see them constructing the sentence
Right.
in the English way.
Right.
One of the examples is Chinese like to put the time and the place in the beginning of the sentence
Yes.
instead of the end.
Right.
So that if I point it out to older students, they can get it like that. But if I don't point it out, it's very easy for them to revert to the English way. So using the logic, explaining things logically is something I would do primarily to the older students.
Okay.
Yeah.
If let's say a person calls you tomorrow, they
Sure.
watch Motivation, they call you, and
Thank you.
they're impressed with you, and they say, I want to take a lesson.
Sure.
They have no experience with Chinese at all.
All right.
Give me a brief sample of what that first lesson would be like. Just say maybe just the first 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
because it'd be good. Because I'm saying it'd be good for the folks at home because you're on this show because I want to encourage people to learn a new language, and I love Chinese. And like I said again, I was fascinated by your teaching
Thank you.
techniques.
Thank you. Well, the first thing I want to always address is I want to get to know the students a little bit. What motivates them? What made them interested in learning Chinese? That's very important. If you're learning for business, then we'll focus on speaking and conversation. If you're trying to, improve your school grades, then we'll work on the fundamentals of vocabulary and everything. But if it's a beginner students, the first thing I will do is to clarify the understanding of what Chinese are. So because Chinese is actually a broad term to include all the languages in China. And there are about 200 something languages
Wow.
in China. And they're varying from region to region. The Chinese writing system pretty much been unified about 2,000 years ago
Yep.
from Qing Dynasty. So when people write it down, you can understand it pretty well. But when people speak, the dialects and accents
Yes.
are very different. But modern, in the past, 6 decades, the Chinese government made the Mandarin as the official language, made Mandarin the official language, and tell everyone this is the language that all the news media and all the TV shows are going to be speaking, and the schools will be teaching Mandarin.
Wow.
So I grew up actually speaking both Mandarin and Shanghainese. Shanghainese, which is the Shanghai local.
And the one person that speaks that. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's completely different. If I speak Shanghainese to people from for example, Beijing, they will not be able to understand me at
Wow.
all. I always compare the difference between Shanghainese and Mandarin is like the Shakespearean English versus the modern slangs. Okay, you hear from the rap music. That's just how different they are.
Wow.
Yeah, and another thing I want to clarify is that first, so we will be I will be teaching Mandarin mostly because that's what mainland China.
Yeah.
That's what's being mostly spoken in China. That's Mandarin. The next thing is the writing system. So there are the simplified character, traditional character. You probably heard of that. You don't know what that means. That means for the past couple of thousand years, Chinese pretty much are writing in the same way the whole time. Confucius writing the same character as we are today.
Yep.
But in the past several decades, to improve the literacy of Chinese people, the Chinese government go through a simplification process to make the
Right.
writing a little easier. So a group of words, not that many, maybe a couple hundred of characters, got simplified.
Yep.
And that system is being used today in mainland China. The traditional characters are still used in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and actually mostly in the United States because early Chinese immigrants are still reading the traditional characters.
Okay.
So simplified characters is something I teach.
Okay,
so
good.
the first 10 minutes I want to clarify that usually.
Good.
And then I will introduce the pinyin system,
Okay.
which is how we speak, how sounds are being pronounced, and then we talk about how characters are developed. So in the very introduction lesson, that's what I do.
Okay. Folks, until next time, as they say in Chinese, can I say 加油?
加油!
That means you can do it, okay? I want to thank you for tuning in to Motivation. Sitting here with my guest, Luke Wong, all right? We're going to catch you next time, and all that you do, stay fit, stay positive, and stay motivated. I love you. Take care of yourself now. We'll see you.